My guest today is an activist, coach, educator, speaker, and triple award winning birthkeeper. I don't recall how we first heard of each other or who introduced us, but I remember the day we met. She was sitting outside a theatre, probably with a glass of wine in hand, and I was getting off at the next bus stop. We saw each other, smiled, and I'm fairly certain the sun came out if it wasn't shining already. Since then, we've shared many meals, bottles of wines, conversation, cocktails, and theatre trips. She's not only been there for the sunny days, but has also held me through profound personal and professional storms. She is a mother of five, including twins, but I don't think I would be properly introducing her if I didn't tell you that she is also the proudest nonna you'll ever meet. Welcome, Mars.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we can end there because I'm just going to go off and weep because that was beautiful. It's lovely to be here, Thando. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, so lovely to have you on this podcast, Mars Lord. And the last time that we were on a call together, you posed this question to the attendees of the call. So I'm going to pose it straight back to you.
Oh,
Why doularing? What made you choose this path out of the many paths that I'm sure were in front of you? Why doularing?
it was never on my radar. And that phrase that people use now wasn't on my bingo card. It was never on my bingo card because I remember probably the reason it was never on my card was because when I was 16, the careers officer at school asked me what I wanted to do. And I said I wanted to go to Oxford and read literature. And she told me that girls like me didn't go to university, much less Oxford. Girls like me became nurses. So that immediately instilled an absolute, there's no way I'm going down that route. I mean, it wasn't even in my plan, etc. But for her to say that, it was like, right, if that were ever to present itself, no. So I'm sat with my twins that you mentioned at a coffee morning. I went to the coffee morning so that I didn't have to hold the twins. I knew when I got there, other people would hold the twins. And of course they did. Um, the woman that had organized the coffee morning, as well as selling aromatherapy, was talking about how she trained to become a doula. And I'd never heard the word before. So I got interested. I took myself out of my, I'm just sitting here quietly drinking some tea and eating some cake, into tell me more. And so she explained what a doula was and that she thought it was just the most wonderful thing. And I said, oh, well, I've helped my sister and I've helped a friend before. I didn't know this was something you could do. And she said, well, if you're going to do this, you have to train with Michelle O'Dont and Liliana Lamas. I was like, fair enough. If I've got to train with them, then that's who I'm training with. And I remember being in this room, this huge hall. Michelle's courses by then were sort of full of just about 20 or 30 people, which I marvel at now. And we went around the room introducing ourselves. And hi, my name's Jane. I've got one child. I'm Patricia. I've got three children, all the way around. And then my name's Sue. I've got 8 children. And I was like, yes, because I was thinking by the time it gets to me. And then it got to me and I said, oh, I'm Mars. I just have 5 children. And I came away and I remember all the way home thinking, I need to have another baby. I mean, I've got to have a baby that way. That was incredible. I mean, I didn't know birth worked like this. Why did nobody tell me birth worked like this? But by the time I opened the door, I realized that I was actually done. I'd given birth to as many children as I wanted to give birth to. And I was very practical because I used to belong to an organization and they said that you needed to do a minimum of 4 births before you could become a proper doula. And so I thought, if I do 4 births and you were only allowed to claim expenses to a certain amount. So I worked it out that if I did 4 births and claimed the maximum expenses and I didn't like it, I hadn't lost any money from the training and everything would be great. Told you, Very practical, very practical. Went to the first birth. It was my eldest son's godmother, her second child. And I said, look, Ronke, can I sort of be your doula? Because I need to do these births and I'm just starting. And she's like, yeah. And her husband went, well, we don't need one, but sure, why not? Because it's you. So I went, and I remember her being in the bath, and I remember him walking in and out with his phone, and me telling him, take your conversation to the other side of your place. Let's keep it calm. And then getting to hospital, I mean, her story on its own was hilarious, but getting to hospital with her because she was having a hospital birth. And as we got out of the car at the car park, in the days when you could actually park in a car park at a hospital, she had an almighty contraction, and two women walking towards us. One took off back towards the hospital, and the other came running towards us. And they were two midwives that were going off shift. And the second one came back with a wheelchair, and Ronke's like, I can't sit, I can't sit. And then we arrive, and then they throw us in. I meet an incredible obstetrician who then says to me, of course, she says, if you look here, look at the way the body, you don't need to interfere. And I was getting this lesson from an obstetrician who clearly understood birth and women, people's bodies. And when that baby was born, I came out and cars were still driving and planes were still, the world kept going. And I remember thinking, do you all not know what has just happened? Why are you not all stopped in awe? And that was when I realized that I had fallen in love with doulaing. And yeah, so why doulaing? Because it's not about hospitals or doctors and midwives and nurses, which is the thing that I thought would have made me turn away. It's about supporting people, walking alongside people, and just being with them in these incredibly vulnerable, awe-inspiring, sometimes mucky, sometimes horrific circumstances, but holding them as they go through it, walking alongside them, witnessing with them and for them this amazing thing. And so from nowhere, I'd crossed it off my bingo card. Suddenly I was a doula.
I love that so much. That story just really resonates with who you are as a person. But just hearing you speak, I think, thank goodness for that teacher who said, don't go to Oxford. Just because it means I can't imagine you doing anything else but being who you are, like you went to that coffee morning thinking, I just want these twins to be held by somebody. And the flip was actually there you were holding hundreds and hundreds of women's hands many years later, and I think what you describe is not just a job, it's what this is for me as well. It's a calling, when you have that feeling that resonates, and that especially that feeling after a birth. I remember recently I went to a birth, and after the birth I said to the sister who was the birth partner of the mom, I said, it was about 5 a.m. I was like, I just want to shout and wake everyone up on the street because it is this like amazing magical thing. But it was about 5 a.m. and I thought, yeah, don't be a nuisance. So I just drove home playing Jonah Trading, Drop the Pilots on repeat and just singing at the top of my voice. So Mars, how do you feel that birth work has changed the person that you've become? Because we know this isn't a job like admin where you can shut your computer down at the end of the day. This is a calling, and it affects so many areas, every area of our lives, really. How do you feel that you becoming a birth keeper has changed you?
I think it's really changed the way I view people. It's not that I didn't like people, because I do. I like people until I don't. But it wasn't that. It was just, I don't, that is such an interesting question because I haven't thought about it too much. Actually, it's not true. I was starting to think about that today. So I must have known somewhere in the universe that this question needed to be answered. And what it did is it changed the way I view people, particularly women and people who give birth. And I use this word because I don't like this word, because when you use it against Black women, it's a weapon. But the strength and the power and the absolute majesty of people when they're birthing. And it just sort of opened me up to see that in more people, not just my clients, but to. So I tell people that I'm Mars, goddess of fucking war, because it's not. I'm not. Someone said to me once, "Oh, you like the chocolate?" It's like, no, I'm just not that sweet. But the passion that it's ignited in me has made me just want to. Oh, well, I suppose I am doing it really. Just stand up and roar for these people who are giving birth, particularly Black-bodied people, and I think it's increased my capacity to love. I think it's increased my capacity to love. And it has drawn on. I sometimes tell people that I think I was born wise, which is a blessing and a curse. And then my therapist told me that it's the Cassandra complex, that I say things that are ahead of the curve, but people don't believe me until they
Oh, I
get
love that. I
around
haven't
the
heard
curve.
of the Umbracom.
Cassandra,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, because people have been saying to me for years, you constantly say these things. And then 5 years later, we're all following in your wake. And I was like, oh. But so I think what it's done for me is it's opened up my wisdom, allowed me to draw on my ancestors, really, draw on the people that came before and the ones who will come after. And I don't know, I suppose you can tell I've not thought about this question. It's like it's opened a portal for me, that portal between life and death. It's just opened a portal for me. I think that's the only way I can say it. And I'm not even sure I completely understand my own meaning just yet.
I love that. As soon as you answered that question and throughout that question, I had chills in my body because I was like, I get it. I get
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. It's like it's not a job. It's who you become as well. And that
Yes.
capacity, it's like your heart expands. So that like capacity to love so much, when we're at
Yeah.
birth, we're just like wanting and wishing so much goodness and love
Yeah.
onto that birthing person and that baby that's coming through as well.
Yeah.
So you answered that perfectly. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
So one of the things you touched on was the meaning of your name. I think that names are sacred. My
Yes.
full name is Thando, which when you translated the meaning would be the equivalent of goddess of love.
Oh, look
And
at us.
exactly, Mars, the god of war in Roman mythology. And I don't think that you can have one without the other,
No.
love and war. So, what are you angry about? And what do you love?
Well, I anyone that knows me will expect this answer. I'm angry at the gaps, the disparities in maternity for Black-bodied women particularly. And it makes me so furious that I'm glad I moved by the sea, because I can scream at the sea. But it makes me really angry. It makes me really angry when people. So I think I shared a post about meeting with the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. And I said that I was talking to him as representing a group, and I was talking to him about having marginalized communities, Black-bodied people, in the heart of the design, and delivery of policy. And a white woman said, no, I think it has to be for all women, because she didn't read the rest of what I said, which is, and what I told the Secretary of State, James Murray, was that when you look after the least, when you care for the least, everyone benefits. And I know that everyone benefits. And the reason I know that everyone benefits is because for over 20 years, I've been shouting about Black maternal health. And suddenly, if you look around in the space, people are talking about trans rights within maternity, LGBTQIA plus safety and rights in maternity, disabled rights. It's South Asian rights. It's like, because I refused to go quietly, because I roared because of my anger at the way black-bodied women were being treated, suddenly other people went, wait, there's a space to roar. And I remember this South Asian doctor, really lovely man, and he said to me, he'd come on a conference that I helped organise through the Dark Lens. And he said, backstage, he said, Mars, the only reason I'm able to do this is because of what you did. And that leads me into what I love. Because of my anger, I'm able to love and watch people say, damn it, no.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm not having that anymore. This is what I'm doing. So I I hate that I have to do what I do, but I love that other people get to do it because I'm doing it. I was going to say have done it, but it's not, because it's not finished yet. Because the other thing I suppose that angers me is the people that use it as a trend, as a way to gain fame, as a way to gain accolades, but aren't actually doing the work on the ground. And that angers me. But so, yeah, I'm angry about Black maternal health and the state of it. And I love the fact that other people, other marginalized groups are coming up and coming forward and saying, us too. Don't get me wrong, though. If you are going to take my work and push Black people off the table, you're doing it wrong. And that will make me fucking furious.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that answer. And I think anger gets such a bad rap, but anger
Yeah.
is such a beautiful, powerful emotion. It
Mm,
indicates that something's not right, something needs to change here.
yeah.
And I think if you're in this work and you're not angry about something, and especially about how Black women get treated, you're not really doing this work. You're not doing it with your eyes
No.
wide open, you know?
Yeah.
How we treat the most vulnerable people in our society says everything
Yeah.
about us, you know? Like birth is such a microcosm of the entire society. If you want to know
Yeah.
anything about a country, look at what's going on birth-wise, you know?
Yes.
I think, yeah, it's exactly that, you know. We know in countries where there's a lot of oppression, mistreatment of people, just look at their birth rates, what's happening in those birth rooms, you know, and that will
Yeah.
tell you a story of what happens politically, what's happening in education, economically, you know, it's
Yeah.
where I think life is, you know, life begins and end there. So speaking about Black women in maternity services, I remember when you and I were chatting many years after we met, and you were living in North London, I was living in South London, and we're saying we need to create a meetup group for Black and South Asian women to meet up in
Mm.
person. And then I remember we found a space in Brixton. Remember marching up to the offices of management and saying, "Hey, one of the stall holders has told me that you want to make a difference and give back to the community. So how about you give us a room?" I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that
Yes.
room?
Yes. Yeah. That very cold room.
That very loud room.
But yeah, but the music was good downstairs. I mean, it was
It
salsa.
was good, and we could have a dance after the session. But I remember at the time, everyone was talking about the Embrace report, you know, it was coming
Yeah.
out with statistics. People were talking about all of these questions. Why Black women's bodies not working properly? Why are South Asian women? Is it the diet? Is it
Yeah.
genetics? Is it all of this? And we were like, whilst we're busy talking, actually, there's people who need some help. So we're going to do something practical here
Hmm.
and set up the space where we can all come together and learn more about what our rights are. Why do you think in the UK specifically, why is there such an issue? That's a big question, but if anyone knows how to answer that question, it's you. Why do you think racism is so prevalent in maternity services? Why do you, or why
Because
do you
it's,
think
yeah,
so?
because it's part of the system and the structure. Because if we look at the medical curricula and the curriculum, we see racism embedded in it. When a midwife drops into my DMs or sends me an email and says, oh, I was taught that Black people don't feel pain in the same way, or another one, I was taught that Black skin is really tough, so it's hard to site cannulas. I was taught that, Black women are strong and can cope with so much more. It's baked into the system. I don't believe that most people go into these professions to cause harm. I do think people get upset when you ask questions and challenge what they do, because they've gone into it to be altruistic, to do good. And when you ask a question, somehow you're questioning their goodness. But I think people are so used to the way that they treat others within society that they don't see that there's a problem. They just think they're all right, they're just being normal. And everybody takes it into their workplace. Just because you're doing something altruistic or something that you deem to be altruistic doesn't mean that you're doing it with any form of cultural safety, doesn't mean that your racism, your bias, your prejudice, let's use all the words because people are just going to get offended whichever one I use, but basically your anti-Black racism, you bring it into the room with you, and you bring it into the room with you every time you say, oh, but they don't feel pain. Oh, but they, oh, but they. And when you hear the midwife handing over to another midwife, oh, she's really aggressive in that room. You're like, they're Black in that room. Oh, she's
Yeah.
been such a princess in that room. She's South Asian in that room. You just hear it. And so it's in the conversations, the fact that Black midwives are more likely to be disciplined and suspended than their white counterparts for much lesser infractions. Their infraction might simply be not agreeing what the white midwife has said. But of course, when we go to the other end of that, the ones who are most likely to be struck off are the white midwives, because they've been referred for really awful things, and we see it happen all the time. There was an influencer midwife who, trolled all the other accounts, but was very racist about a Black woman in that same space. And ultimately, the powers that be said, yeah, we've looked at it all and, it's fine. We've just moved her to another hospital. And it's
Cause
like,
more harm there.
to cause more harm there. So there's no accountability for these things. But people want to do all of these sort of courses and say, right, I've done a course, it's fine. Whereas I believe that before you can do those courses, you need to look at yourself. And all of the courses teach you to look out and look elsewhere and think about things you can change here, there, and the other. But I haven't found one yet within this space that makes you look inward. So I created one, Awakening Seeds, so that people can, because people say, oh yeah, my kids have got all sorts of multicultural books on their bookshelf. What about you? What do you mean? Your kid's going to grow to be an adult, and they're going to see that you don't have Black people, queer people, disabled people on your bookshelf or in the things that you watch. So actually, you're changing nothing. What are you doing within yourself? Because when we realize what it is to love people, we will make sure we do the inner work so that we can love people the way they deserve to be loved. And a Black-bodied woman in labor deserves to have her needs met, deserves to be heard without being labeled, deserves to have a cannula sighted without it being this sort of bodge job of trying to force it in when you would never force it in somebody else. So, yeah. Did I answer your question? Because I feel like I went on 3 tangents there.
No, you answered it beautifully. You answered it fully, which leads me also to the next question really well about cultural competency. Again, people hear words and they think, oh, that sounds really good. And they they catch on to it, but they don't know maybe what it means or actually
Yeah.
fully practice it, and we know with birth work, if you are somebody who has certain ideas, it's not like you go into
Mm-hmm.
the changing room, put on your scrubs or your
Mm-hmm.
midwife uniform and, put take off your racism and your biases and all of that and put them
Yeah.
aside. It will show up within the birth space,
Yeah.
but I think, this is something, cultural competency is something that really, it needs to go also beyond the birth room, it needs to be
Mm.
conversations, like you said, people having those conversations around their dinner table,
Mm.
around, in the schoolroom, in the boardroom as well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and what do you think can be done? First of all, what do you think cultural competency is? Somebody's listening and they haven't heard of it. And how can somebody go, okay, I want to start off practicing how to be culturally competent?
I think we all lean heavily on cultural competency, which is when I first started teaching, that's how I taught it. But I moved away from it and I was trying to find, there's a New Zealand woman who her name has escaped me, but she talks about cultural safety, which is something I've been talking about for a few years. And cultural competency is about learning about the cultural practices of others. It's about knowledge, skills, and what you do with it. And I'm just looking at my notes here because I wanted to make sure that I sort of honed in on what it is that I mean. But cultural safety is about power dynamics, system equity, and critical consciousness. So that goes beyond what you do with that one person there. This is
Yes.
about what you're doing with everyone. And so it's about eliminating inequity. It's about finding people where they are and making sure the system works for them. But the system isn't broken. The system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. When a Black woman says, I don't like my team, I want to change my midwife, my doctor, my team, she is punished with the tools that the system has. Social services at her door, the police at her door, because she dared to say, you're not listening to me. I don't feel safe here. I want a different team. Your legal right to change your team. But she was punished for it almost legally because police and social services are at her door. You need to be good and quiet so that do what we've told you. Therefore, we won't bring trouble to your door. So the system works because it has the tools that it employs. So if you're being culturally competent, it's a bit like saying, yeah, I recognize you've got other cultural aspects about you. I'll see what I can do about it.
Like tick box,
Tick,
isn't
tick,
it?
tick. And this is why I don't think cultural competency courses work.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because I ran them for ages and I'm like, yeah, this isn't. And also, it sounds nicer than anti racism when you say cultural competency. So, the bridge between cultural safety and really getting into your anti racism work is from competency to safety. What does the system say? What does the structure say? What does equity say? Oh, hold on. Now I need to do my anti racism personally so that I can go and ensure that there is cultural safety. It's a bit, cultural competency to me at the moment is a bit like saying, well, at least you and the baby survived.
Yeah, exactly.
And people deserve so much more than that.
Absolutely. I often say it's not just are you well physically, is mom, birthing person, parent, and baby walking out of the hospital okay? It's like, what about the emotional safety, the mental safety as well,
Yeah.
And I think, hearing you talk about it, I love that you've gone from like teaching cultural competency to cultural safety, because who would you rather be looked after? Somebody who says, well, I'm culturally competent or I'm culturally safe.
Right?
Even just hearing it in that way, like there's a huge difference with
Huge.
that. And I know one of the things that you do so well in your course, Abuela Doulas, is really making sure that in the curriculum, like that safety is embedded
Yeah.
amongst the participants. You create that safe space that people can like bring all of their skills forward. People learn from each other. People become safe people as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about Abuela Doulas. Why did you start it? What is it all about?
I
What
was
does abuela mean? Again, going back to the sacredness of names. Can you
so the
please
word
tell?
abuela is a Spanish word, and it's a Spanish word for grandmother. So abuela, the word abuela comes from the Spanish for grandmother. I have two words that I love for grandmother. Abuela, which is the Spanish word, and nonna, which is the Italian word. But nonna doulas didn't have the same ring to it. Whereas abuela doulas has just got this beautiful singing sound. So I train as abuela doulas. My organization is abuela doulas. To my grandchildren, I'm nonna because I just love the word nonna. I just have to have it in my life. Someone once said to me, "Oh, I think obviously they were non-melanated. That's cultural appropriation." It's like, I don't think it works the way you think it does. And then I said to her, and besides, what do you know about my enslaved background, the people that stole me? And she's never asked again, so that was good. That was pretty good. Anyway, but now enough about them. So for me,
How did she get there?
oh,
Anyway.
I'm amazed at how people get where they get. But for me, grandmother was an important word to use in what I'm doing because I truly believe in leaning back into our ancestral knowledge, bringing it forward into modern birth. The postnatal course is called the Sankofa, looking back to bring forward. Like you say, words, names have power. And for me, it was like, okay, let's talk about this. What is it that we're doing here? And so I mentioned briefly that I had belonged to a doula organization. And I remember saying, there's nothing here for Black people. I want to write a course. And I was told, we don't need any more courses. We have plenty of courses. And I said, okay, but I'd still like to write a course. And they said, well, there's no point because we're not going to certify or whatever it is they call any more courses. And so I said, fine. And then I watched as other white women came and were creating more of these courses that were no longer needed.
And
And then
probably
I had,
send the front of the queue.
right. And then I
Yeah.
thought, well, I've written my course. I think I'm going to see if they will certify it. And as I made that decision, I realized it was the wrong decision. So it was the wrong decision because they were a harmful organization. And if I want to keep people safe, why would I put them into that organization? And they sort of put the nail in the coffin for me when they then decided to charge me 3 times what they charged anyone else to certify with them.
What? That is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. So first of all, we don't need any more courses, and then they have lots of people, white people, creating courses. Then, all right, but to certify your course, the price has gone up threefold. And then I remember, and I'd already sort of sent in my stuff. And so I said, no, I don't want it. And then I remembered that what they were doing was they were getting people who were taking over as the head of education, the ones that were deciding, was taking bits of other people's work to create their own courses. So I emailed them and I said, you do not have my permission to use my work. I want everything back and I want you to destroy all copies. I don't know if that truly happened because they weren't listening to me in the beginning. They weren't listening to me when I talked to them about Black maternal health. And it was Black maternal health that made me realize that I needed to write my own course because whenever a Black doula inquired with them, they always pointed them at me. And I was like, I can't be the only Black doula. And I wasn't the only Black doula, but I think I was the only Black doula within their organization because other Black doulas had come in and gone straight out the door. And I thought our communities deserve people who understand. And I don't think that doulaing is the preserve or should be the preserve of white middle class women, or just the preserve of white women, particularly as the more we look back into our history and our ancestry, we see how we've been always been doing this work anyway. And so that was why I decided to create Abuela Doulas. And I predominantly trained black and brown bodied women. But what has astounded me, I mean, I don't know what astounds me really, because if you say this is for black people, white people always appear. But the white women that came to me, I'm very clear and I say, you will not be centered in this work. You are welcomed in this work. You contribute in this work, but you are not the center. The center is black bodied women. And so the white women that I've trained, pretty much all of them operate with cultural safety because of what I do in the course. They're not getting a cultural competency module. They're not getting somebody with black or brown skin to talk to them for 10 or 15 minutes about, I don't know, I'm not even sure what they talk about. I have had people say to me, oh yeah, I've done a course and it was 15 minutes and it was over. And I'm like, this can't be done in 15 minutes. So I wanted people that could serve their communities, people that their communities could look to and say, you're who I want for me. And that was pretty much why I sort of started Abuela Doulas, because I needed to do something proactive to close the disparities gap. And if a black-bodied woman is going into birth with a culturally incompetent or barely competent doula, then she was going to be harmed.
Yeah.
Someone told me that they were working for one of the birthing charities, very white savior-ish. And she said to me the amount of harm she saw being done. And that's why cultural safety is important. That's why people need to do that investigation within themselves as to what they're doing. And of course, the upside of Abuela Doulas is my courses are now filled with black and brown bodied women, trans people, disabled people, queer people, you name the marginalization. And I've probably trained a
Yeah,
fair
it's
number
so
of them.
true. And the white people who you've trained as well, they are true allies, you know,
Yes.
they get it.
Yeah. And the work that they do, and some of them may never get a black client, and they recognize that they may never get a black client, but it doesn't stop the way they teach and the way they ensure that everyone is included in the education that they're giving. And I love that. But what I love is watching them rising, all of the doulas that I'm training, the ones that want to, into positions where they're transforming the world. You've got Amanda Smith up in Birmingham with the maternal engagement action, who's transforming what it is like for black-bodied women to birth there. You know, other doulas that I've trained have gone on to be great awareness erasers and form, different organizations. And I just look and I'm like, this is how it should be, you know? And again, because I do love the Abuela Doulas, can talk about Abuela Doulas for ages. One of the things that they do within the course is they have to submit a post-course project. And the post-course project has to be about their heritage and birth and the postpartum, the postnatal period. I read one the other, and all the white women all say, "Oh, I don't really have any culture," and I'm like, "Miss me with that nonsense. Of course you have culture. When you get past the guilt of colonization, when you strip that away, what is your culture?" And I just almost in tears where someone's written an Irish written their project as an Irish story, a particular type. I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce the name. And I was in tears reading this as she takes me through the journey of someone's birth, bringing in these old Irish traditions and things and superstitions. I said, another one just went to her homeland of Sri Lanka because she started delving into her history, and she just went and spent a few weeks out there learning about the indigenous midwives and people who
Wow.
supported birth, and then bringing this knowledge back and into their work and into the places where they speak. Abuela Du's, I mean, it's the first time I've ever thought to thank the woman who told me that I would never go to university. When you said it, I was like, oh God, I've never thought of it like that. But because of
Gosh,
that,
thank her on all of our behalf, please. If you,
yes,
if
but
you see
because of
her
that,
again.
look at what people are doing. The whole Black maternal health conversation is because I was right there shouting it, being the Cassandra before people were talking about it. Then people kept telling me to be nice, to be quiet, that it didn't matter, that it was just birth, that it was the fault of Black bodies. And now people are like, wait, it's systemic and structural racism. Welcome to the party. So that's why I created Abuela Doulas, and that is one of the results of Abuela Doulas.
I love that. What a beautiful story. And just going back to one of the points that you made about even the white women, the allies who come onto your course, actually what happens in the birth space is we know as Black women, you could be the greatest athlete in the world. You could be very educated. You could be well off.
Yeah.
You could eat all the recommended food that they recommend in
Mm-hmm.
the NHS diet profile, which doesn't include my lovely cornmeal porridge, yeah, and all that.
Uh-huh.
But one thing that we can't do in our state of vulnerability as Black women is take our skin off. When
Yeah.
you're white, if you're coming in, you're vulnerable, you're in labor, you're just in the throes of the intensity of labor and birth, no matter what your class is, you've still got your skin almost to protect you, But what
Yeah.
Abuela trained doula does in the space is to be able to even recognize all of those inequalities,
Mm.
disparities, biases in all situations as well,
Yeah.
And I think even it's not the fact that maybe they may or may not ever work with Black families, it's just that awareness. And we know this
Yeah.
work that we do, just like how we started off this conversation about how it changes who we become, it
Yeah.
goes into every single area of your life. And I would
Yeah.
love for you to just collect all of the projects that people do at the end of the course, because I think that would make an amazing exhibition and people just talking about these and just having some kind of
Yeah.
place where people can display this.
I
Could
think
be a website, just an idea.
no, it's funny because that's one of those things in the back of my head. It's like time, I need time. Like I need to do this. But you know, I've I've been thinking about it more and more. People have made videos, sent me dissertations. One person wrote a book. There are paintings, there's needlework, and it's like, yeah, actually you're right. They do deserve to be seen by a wider audience. Challenge accepted.
Exactly. And this is the second time that you've told me about like all what comes out from this project that people do. And in the moment, I just thought, okay, people need to not just hear about this, but they need to see and experience, and
Mm,
hear and touch and feel all of this because this is the work that, like, imagine coming out of a course and doing this. Some people go to university for 3 years plus and don't come out with something like that. And I think,
yeah.
yeah, let's let's organize that. And can we please invite the teacher who said you shouldn't go to Oxford so we can give the thank you card and say thank you. Speaking of courses, I remember many years ago when I first moved to London, and I did your Loving the Multiple Mamas course, and
Mhm.
I loved it so much. You hosted it very generously in your home, and we learned about how to advocate for multiple mamas in the perinatal phase. And since then, somehow I've worked with quite a few families having twins. Somebody called me the twin specialist doula. One,
That was
my
that was my
lovely,
title. That was my
oh, I love
title
it.
until I
But you
retired.
You handed the baton over. My last birth was with twins. My next one is with twins.
Oh, yes.
And I always just think, hang on, why do twins? It's almost like breach in some ways, where
Mm,
the policies that we see when people are facing, pregnant person who is expecting twins, suddenly it's risk, 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 risk. It's
yeah,
almost like the manual on human rights goes out of
yeah.
the window. And this is something that's really made me angry recently. And I remember even asking my local hospitals, what is your home birth policy for twins? My clients didn't want a home birth. I was just
Mm,
simply asking that question because I wanted to see, are things fair in this situation?
yeah,
And it was
yeah.
immediately, oh no, by the way, this was a message that I sent two messages. One, I slid into their DMs. The second message was a text message to the
Coming in.
head of the
Hmm.
home birth team, and I said, what is your home birth policy? And the response was, oh, do you know what? Actually, I've spoken to the out of guidelines midwife who's been chatting to you and this family about this, and we don't recommend a twin birth, a twin
You didn't
home birth.
ask. You didn't ask their recommendation. You asked what their policy was.
Exactly. Exactly. Didn't ask for that. No question about, can we speak to them and understand why, or even just grouping, okay, twins, suddenly it's not even what kind of twins, what's the position, are they sharing a sac, are they
Mm.
sharing a placenta? And it was just like this, no twins, no, computer says no. And this case was, the parents were fighting for all of their rights. We've contacted birth rights, aims, all of that. And it just really struck me, like, what the actual problem is with twins is nothing to do with the babies, nothing to do with the parents. It's the confidence of the caregivers. Why,
Totally.
yeah, why do you think that why do you think we've lost this confidence? Actually, it's not even to do with twins, but why do you think the obstetricians, the midwives don't have these skills? Twins have always been there since the beginning of time. This is not a new invention. Why is the research not focusing on this? Why are the
Mm.
policies not taking this into account?
It's it's litigation. They are fearful of a single birth, a singleton birth. And if they're fearful of a singleton birth, well, two babies means twice as much could go wrong, you know, and that's an even bigger legal claim and litigation. And for years, I mean, I would have said it when I did the Loving the Multiple Mamas course that you were on. We need to get rid of that word risk and put consideration in its place. Because when we say risk, everyone goes to worst case scenario. When we say consideration, it's like, oh, yeah, these are things to think about. We say risk, and it's like, right, everything's off the table. And I think it's fear. And I think this over reliance on modern technology, not that modern technology is wrong, but this over reliance on modern technology has caused people to sort of step back and hand over their knowledge, their innate training about how birth works. Having, I still believe it, having doctors at the top of that hierarchy is completely wrong, because doctors are trained with a very narrow vision for what normal looks like. And their whole training is about solving problems. So if you keep looking for a problem, you'll find a problem. Whereas midwives used to be trained in a wider range of what normal is, which is why I think midwives should be able to see what normal is and then go, oh, this is diverging from normal. We need a doctor. So it's not that I don't think doctors are important, because I've supported twin births, vaginal twin births. Oh my gosh, Thando, my biggest, it's not my regret because it was dad's fault, but my biggest disappointment was supporting this twin couple. They were giving birth at the Homerton Hospital, who were really good at the time. And I'd done all the pre-work with them and everything, and we were really excited, and they really knew what they were doing. And she was one of those quiet birthers. So, you go in and midwives are like, oh, they're not making enough noise, so they're not ready to give birth. Anyway, she's in the hospital. They've said she can give birth in the water. Twins. Dad didn't call me. She said to Dad, call Mars, call Mars. He goes, oh, no, you've got ages yet. The midwife said you've got ages yet. And she said, call Mars. And he went, I'll call her, but we'll call her in a minute. And then things picked up because she was in the water. And I don't know if it was the midwife panicked about the thought of doing twins in water. But the midwife says, oh, this is going quite slowly. Let's get you out of the pool. And as she came out of the pool, the babies were born. I remember Dad arrived at my house because I was doing their placentas, floating in the sky. And he goes, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But oh, the babies are born. I'm like, so that's my biggest disappointment because I was almost at a twin water birth in a hospital. I mean, and
Wow.
those three thick twins, too risky, litigation, hospital, got to use our technology and keep things as safe as possible, as though we don't do that at home. And water, twins in water in hospital. But anyway, I think it comes down to fear. I read this amazing book years ago. I I have it on my Kindle, which my child has. And the thing that stood out to me was risk and consideration because of fear. When your caregiver is in fear, how can you trust them? Which means, how do you trust yourself to birth your twin babies if the person that's supporting you is in fear? And I think one of the reasons why there are so many twin cesarean births isn't down to medical reasoning or medical reasons, it's down to fear. It will be safer, and yet the studies don't prove that it's safer. And then you hear things like, well, we're going to induce you at 36 weeks. Why? Because twins come early. I remember I was in with a client and the doctor said that. And I said, but if twins come early, you don't need to induce them to come early. Make it make sense. So it's
Yeah, he
fear.
must have been thinking, oh, she caught me, because it doesn't make sense.
No. But I think it comes down to fear. I think it's the fear of the caregiver that is projected onto and then held onto in so many cases by the person giving birth. I just want to be safe. It's marginal, the difference, I think, though I haven't looked at it for a few years now, but it's marginal, the difference in safety between a vaginal twin birth and a cesarean twin birth.
It is. I've looked into this recently, and you just honestly answering that question, that's exactly what it comes down to. It's litigation, But the not but and the problem is we're going to keep on losing skills, and we're not going to get confident because immediately it's like, oh no, you're not allowed to use the birth center. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to use this. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's literally my local hospital. And I've said
Yeah.
to them, do you understand that this problem isn't going to go away? We need to start actually working together in this situation, because more twins are going to keep being born and you're going to have this problem. And we're training more birth keepers and they're going to come and tell you about human rights. So we need to figure this out, And interesting was like the out of guidelines midwife. It's like, but your job is out of guidelines midwife. And then here you are saying you can't do anything out of guidelines, or well, we can't do intermittent monitoring with twins because it's basically useless. It's like, but that's what's been happening in all of the midwife appointments. So are you saying that that's just been a waste of time? And it's that fear of like, well, we won't know if we're listening to both babies or if we're listening to mom's heart rate. And I said, well, maybe then you can get a midwife from the home birth team to come in. So we're not planning a home birth. We want to be at the birth center. Get one of them to come in. They can listen to the other baby. And how about we just
So
first
simple.
try, and then we can move. We had to get the legal department involved, had to do simulations, and it's just like, this is a
It's
breach of
ridiculous, right?
human rights. The people are informed. Like, no wonder maternity services is at a crisis in the UK
So what,
today.
yeah. So what that speaks to, which goes back to your point of losing skills, is we are not teaching, training midwives and doctors to do their jobs to their fullest extent. Because as soon as you said, she said, well, how will we know? And I remember saying that to a client and a midwife, well, just get another midwife because the heartbeats won't be exactly the same. But isn't that the same as you notice the difference between the maternal or the parent's heart rate compared to the fetal heart rate? And if you've been taught to distinguish that, why can't you distinguish these? And if it's because, well, because babies' heart rates change, then bring in someone else. I'm reasonably convinced the person giving birth to them will be happy for one midwife to be here and one midwife to be here, both listening to separate babies. But Yom's like, no, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to induce you, or we're going to have you hooked up to monitors with epidurals, or we're just going to take you through for a cesarean because it makes it safer for us and it works for our convenience. As though, oh, talk about things that make me angry. When doctors or midwives say, I want the best for your baby, I don't want your baby to die. Tell me, on what planet does the parent want those things?
Yeah, exactly that. The number of times I've had to say recently, do you know that nobody wants better outcomes for this baby or these babies than the parents?
Yeah.
Let's just start off there and have shared decision making, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. This is exactly why I know I said this to you recently, but I said, please bring back that course because I think people need to. I don't think that you can be a full birth keeper, safe doula without actually knowing how to support all people. And I think this is an area that just really gets overlooked, you know. And I remember saying the hospital when eventually many meetings later, I was thinking, am I birth keeper or am I a bouncer? Literally having to go to all meetings, every meeting,
Mm.
like it was like twice a week for the last few months. And I just thought, hey, also the one thing that actually happened is one of the last meetings where there was like one of the top consultants who's like on the board and somebody else and legal departments now involved. And they said, yeah, we just haven't done this before and we're scared. I said, you know what? This is the first time in the last few months that you've had a human response because everything before is just computer says no, computer says no, computer says
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we need birth keepers out there who are going to go, do you know what? The difference, I always think of midwives and obstetricians as my colleagues, but the difference is we work for the families who employ us, not for the hospital. So we're not coming at,
Mm.
well, what if I lose my job, you know? And fear is contagious. And so
So
is
contagious.
joy as well, you know, and we have
Yes.
the ability
Yes.
to influence. Everybody in the room has the ability to kind of either, you know, if you think of like those light switches with the dial, like you can
Oh,
either
the dimmer
dial up
switches.
the
Yeah.
oxytocin, yeah, exactly, dial up the oxytocin or dial it down. And every interaction you have with somebody who's pregnant, you're touching that switch and you're either turning it up or you turning it down. Really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this podcast is called Birth, Breath, and Death. I think there's so many similarities with birth and death. It's the same
Mm.
issues come up: autonomy, consent, fear,
Mm-hmm.
human rights. So in closing, what do you think makes a good death?
Oh, the same grace and dignity that people should be afforded in birth is what makes a good death, I think. Being able to go out with grace and dignity, not with people who it's just a job and they don't care about your transition and your moment. It's someone who's there to not just fill you full of drugs so that, as far as they know, you have a pain-free death, but someone's who would be with you and usher you out the way that I hope you've been ushered in peace, in grace, in dignity. I once heard about people who sing over dying people as they die, and I decided that if my death allows for it, I would want to be sung out. I would want to be sung out. I just think what a wonderful way to go, that that the last sounds I hear are people singing. And I don't even think they have to be beautiful singers, but please, no tone deaf people.
I was about to say, I don't know. You might want me there, but I don't know if I'm going to be.
But, to be held, to have human touch, and to have that sound, knowing that there are people there who care for you, to just usher you through that next portal. That's what I think. Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, beautiful. Honestly, and to have one of those, either a good birth or a good death, is such a blessing. The words that you use to paint that picture. But imagine if people could have both and that was the norm, good
Oh,
birth and a good death.
yeah. That
The
would
work
just be
continues.
amazing. The work continues. It does indeed. And you've given come on your podcast, Thando, and you send me home with homework.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you do this to me all the time.
Hey, what can I tell you?
Yeah. Mars, as always, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for doing the work that you are. Thank you for being a safe person to all people. Thank you for loving people. May you continue onwards and upwards with this work. May you know that the ancestors, not just your ancestors, the ancestors who have been doing this work from the beginning of time are at your back. May they open doors for you as well. May you be guided with all the souls who are coming through us. Thank you for being who you are. We are blessed to have you in this work. Thank you as well to all the people who have closed the doors and said, no, we don't want your course. No, we don't want you at this university, because they've really, in their own way, really paved the way for you to go, okay, I'm going to to do the work that I need to do in a different way, and so many, so many, so many, so many women, more women that I'm sure you could count many times over, have benefited from your work. So truly, thank you so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.